There was something that happened the second year of college for me that absolutely changed everything in my mind about how I view people. I remember it was in my Theories of Personality class, and the professor was telling us a fictional scenario. She said, what if you walked into a gas station, and there was a person that walked in behind you, and they just seemed very morose, didn't say much, very shy. She said, your first inclination studying psychology would be,
okay, this person is an introvert.
And in my mind, I was thinking, well, yeah, that's what I would guess. And she's like, wrong. And I was like, huh?
Huh?
She goes on to say, you cannot conclude anything about a person just based upon one incident. Sounds pretty common sense, but for me, wow. At that time, whenever I saw someone, I would try to sum somebody up like that. Introvert. But no, my professor said that you are never to jump to conclusions without having more information about a person. That incident is one of the big inspirations for this video today. If you've been around my channel, you know that I enjoy Myers-Briggs type inventory. But there is a fine line between using a personality system and jumping to conclusions or stereotyping. When does using the Myers-Briggs type inventory become stereotyping? And how do we avoid falling into that trap? To start, let's just clarify what the MBTI is meant to do. The MBTI is meant to help us understand how different people prefer to react to and perceive the world, with the key word here being prefer. MBTI is not meant to tell us what we are and aren't able to do. It tells us what we prefer to do. Natural tendencies, natural gifts in some cases. It can indicate general strengths and weaknesses common to each personality type, in part because we get so good at doing what we prefer to do. For example, I'm an INFJ, and INFJs typically, in a very general sense, like psychology. So INFJs tend to get pretty good at psychology because they enjoy doing it. Practice makes progress. But in no way does it say that certain personality types cannot get good at a certain skill or must get good at a certain skill. Now, some of you might already be sensing,
Yeah, I can see where this could turn into a problem with stereotyping.
and why is it that we are prone to stereotyping? Every person, studies have found, have some type of preconceived yet untrue idea about certain types of people or certain cultures, even objects, certain places. Why does it seem we end up using stereotypes despite all this talk in the public about we need to end stereotypes and we need to educate? No, it does not mean that you are a bad person. Our human minds are hardwired to try to make shortcuts so that every time you encounter someone new or something new, you have some kind of idea of what to expect, and these shortcuts help save us time and mental energy. You do not need to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, every time you encounter something unfamiliar. Now, this is not necessarily a bad tendency of human beings to try to take mental shortcuts. In fact, in many cases, it does work for us. At least the way I see it, the problem really comes in whenever we decide to cling to our stereotypes and never try to think outside of them. We're all going to make mistakes. That is human. So we are consistently walking this fine line between mental shortcuts to help us understand life that are healthy and true, not wanting to get caught up inside of some kind of idea that we cannot let go of. I want to say right now that I am not here to pick on anybody.
Like I said at the beginning, I did this. I still do this.
Education, which I hope this video will really help with, is definitely no silver bullet for ending all stereotypes. But it does keep us aware of how our minds are working, and the more we understand ourselves, the less we are limited by ourselves. Now, before we talk about this healthy fine line that we need to walk when it comes to understanding people, let's talk about the two extreme ends on either side of this line. On one extreme are the people who reject anything to do with personality typing, MBTI, Enneagram, any type of typing. They prefer to understand everyone with a completely blank slate, no generalization at all, They feel like frameworks are very limiting to people, and I can definitely understand that perspective. I don't think people have to use MBTI or personality typing to understand people. There is no shame in not using it. But I will say that on a subconscious level, your mind is still going to be grappling to find shortcuts and ways of understanding the world more quickly. Even if you don't consciously embrace a system, your mind is going to make its own system. You can't really stop it from doing that. What I am saying is that even if you try to be completely neutral with the world and everyone in it,
It's just not possible on a human level to be completely free of that.
and on the other end of the spectrum, we have people who like to box in individuals based on their type, and they want everything that is stereotypical to apply to every person of that type. If anyone who's an INTP deviates from what people think ought to be the norm for that type, they may be like,
I don't know. INTPs don't function like that.
and if one individual has too much deviation from what they feel an INTP ought to be, they may try to move that person from that category that they scored in to something else just based on a few things not lining up. The ultimate result that mindset around MBTI creates, individuals not being treated as unique people. They end up being stereotyped into these molds, and I used to be one of these people. I am so sorry. Now, how do you know if you're doing this? And again, I speak from personal experience because I used to be this way. The way that I figured out that I was doing it, aside from the college story that I told you at the beginning of this video, is that once I learned someone's MBTI type, I would quit learning about them. Like, that was all that I needed to know. I knew personal experience would always be unique. But as far as how they responded to the world, I did kind of put people in boxes. It wasn't until later in life that I realized MBTI is the starting point, not the ending point for understanding somebody. I can learn about somebody's MBTI type up front. That's a great place to start. Now let me learn about the nuances of you personally. I can expect you to fit a lot of the typical traits, but if I see something about you that doesn't fit, doesn't mean you're not that type. It just means you're an individual. You are not the type, you are yourself who has a type that generally fits you and generally says something about you. If I were to meet an ISTJ, whenever I still had this mindset, and this ISTJ was like,
Oh, I don't have a very good memory.
and ISTJs are known for having good memories, I might be like,
Well, I think you might have a better memory than what you give yourself credit for. ISTJs have good memories.
I would quit listening to that person, which is a huge breach of communication. I thought that because I knew their type, I knew better. Now, sometimes I would find out that it was true that person was not giving themselves enough credit for whatever trait that they think they didn't have. Maybe this ISTJ, I find out she does have a pretty good memory. I don't think anybody's self-awareness is 100%, but it still stands. If someone tells you one thing and you protest it only on the basis of their type, I think it's important to listen to what a person says about themselves. The way that I prefer to understand people nowadays is if I am going to protest what someone says about themselves, I'm going to base that protest on how they function. Actions speak louder than words. It wouldn't be right of me to say you have to have a good memory because you're an ISTJ. But I think it would be okay to be like,
I think you do have a good memory because you memorized like all these different history facts and you aced that quiz and you aced that test and you can remember everybody's birthday and phone number and social security.
that's more reason to protest the idea maybe this person actually does have a good memory. And I cannot say this enough, even seasoned MBTI users or people who use any kind of personality typing system can fall into this. Because like I said, it is our nature to try to simplify the world around. Now between these two extremes is a very healthy and useful middle ground. View personality not as boxes, but as a gradient. There are infinite, beautiful hues that every individual can have within that category. To make an analogy, blue is one overarching color, but if you really break it down, there are so many infinite possibilities in the color of blue that you can have. It's the same way with people. Even though you can have somebody categorized as ENFP, an ESTJ, or an INFJ, there is still so much room for individuality within those broad categories. I can tell you firsthand that even the most stereotypical people in each type are still not going to fit perfectly into their category. Take me as an example. I am an INFJ, and I will say firsthand I am probably one of the most stereotypical INFJs that I know. The only letter that I am not extreme on is feeling. I actually score very, very close to thinking. Yes, I have a lot of INFJ traits. One thing that does deviate from the typical type, INFJs are usually a bit more relationship oriented. I value relationships, but I will not deny I am a workaholic and I tend to be very work-oriented. Being more work than relationship-oriented is stereotypically more INTJ than INFJ, and I'm definitely an INFJ. I am not my type. No one is their type. I want you to look at this book cover. What can you tell me about this book based on this picture? You may be like, well, she looks young, so maybe young adult or a student. She has a cake and she has an apron on, which implies that, she was probably in the kitchen making that cake. So you can probably guess that this does have to do with baking and cooking. She is indeed a student in this book. But if I asked you, what's her name? And no, you may not read the synopsis in the back, that's cheating. Who her best friend is? What is her history? What is it that drives her toward that dream? You would not be able to guess just based upon looking at this picture. It's the same way with MBTI. You can guess quite a bit about a person just based on that. But you don't know everything. It's about just getting a broad idea to help you keep learning about a person. I consider MBTI to be a very good and healthy thing when used in this way. If someone tried to stick me in a box and close that lid, aside from being concerned about probable suffocation in that instance, I'd be concerned that they would not be able to understand me. Using MBTI in such a narrow way would actually hinder communication and understanding. Here's what I mean. Say someone tried fitting me into that box, and then the next week, I get so caught up in my work and lose touch with friends. Stereotypers, is that a word?
It is now.
Stereotypers would be confused because,
Well, INFJs don't do that.
if that is their reaction, then they have just turned MBTI from a tool for understanding to a tool for stereotyping. If you've been around my channel long, then you know that I enjoy doing some acting. Not the best acting in the world, but I'm always working on those skills in hopes of improving my work quality for you. If you were to treat MBTI as a hard and fast rule, you might say something like,
Well, artists and personality types are really better at acting and performing arts. You're an INFJ, so don't get your hopes up.
MBTI does not limit my growth, it guides my growth. Ultimately, I want to become a better YouTuber and constantly improve this channel, which, as you know, is focused on psychology. True to a typical INFJ, psychology comes more naturally than, say, the acting aspect. It's more of an uphill battle teaching myself that because it's not one of my natural strengths. MBTI has shown me it is kind of a weakness for me. And because I understand that, I can better chart my course for becoming the better YouTuber that I want to be. I know that that's one area that I need to focus on a little bit harder than some of the other areas that I have to improve upon. I'm sure that some skeptics are out there saying,
Good for you, but can't you just grow without MBTI?
yes, you definitely can. It has definitely helped me, and I know many other people it has helped, but it is not an absolute must for personal growth. If you already listen well and understand people's differences really well, and keep up healthy relationships with others as well as a healthy relationship with yourself, then more power to you. Maybe MBTI wouldn't even help you much, and there is nothing wrong with that.
And there is nothing wrong with that.
You are acing life if you have all those. But when I do recommend that you use it is when maybe you're a person like me and you grew up thinking that something was wrong with you because you were too quiet and you would rather read a book than go to a party. And you grew up thinking that your sensitivity to others was a weakness. And when you try to eradicate that quality out of yourself, thinking that it's putting you at a disadvantage. Maybe you thought that your tendency to think about the future a lot and to think about possibilities was of no value and a sign that there was something wrong with you, because it seemed like the only people around you who were valued were the ones who lived in the moment and talked more than thought. Maybe you also used to think that the only way that you would ever succeed was to act and think like everybody else around you. Maybe you were also ashamed of being different and felt like that you were not worthy of love and belonging until you conformed. Maybe finding out that you're a rare personality type with the unique set of strengths is what it will finally take for you to love and accept yourself. If you feel any of these ways, then maybe it's worth giving MBTI a shot. Because whenever you use it in a healthy way, it may wake you up to the idea that maybe, just maybe, all the ways that the world told you that you are weak are actually what make you strong. Those may be the very strengths that help you make your place in this world.